the roll sheet should be going around. How many of you are disappointed that we're here? Didn't you think that it was going to snow? No? Okay. Right. It's Oklahoma. They can't tell us what the weather is going to be. And it's kind of apropos that I'm asking you about the weather, because weather involves forecasting, right? We're talking about strategies today. And it becomes increasingly difficult in Oklahoma to forecast the weather, so they said that we would have a chance of snow and precipitation, mostly in the western part of Oklahoma City. Some of it could be accumulating and sticking. And of course, it didn't happen, right? Our forecasts are notoriously bad. Is that the fault of the weathermen in Oklahoma? Are they really bad weather people in Oklahoma? Generally? It could be because, on average, Oklahoma has frontal passage something like every 3 days, right? So we get all 4 seasons in 1 week in Oklahoma. It's one of the wonderful things about living here. You get to experience all of it in a wide range in a very short period of time. It makes planning very difficult. So we're going to talk about planning today and organizational strategies and things like that. And one of the things that I want you to think about, because the book talks a lot about the corporate level, and so it's written at a corporate level. Many of you will be going into small to mid-sized firms, so let's think about how this is applicable to that, and also how it's applicable to your own lives. So we'll talk a little bit about that when we talk about goals. But the first thing that we have to do when we decide that we want to do something, right, is we have to decide what kind of entity we're going to become. What kind of entities are there? Well, there's for-profits, which are what? Companies that want to make money. Organizations that want to make money. That's what most of you are going to want to go into, but marketing is applicable not only for for-profits, it's also applicable for what? Non-for-profits. Now, why in the world would anybody want to be a non-profit? Charity. What? To help people. They have different ideas about what is valuable, right? And so that's important, but they still have to use marketing and planning and things like that, even though they don't exist to make a profit. So we have to decide what type of entity we're going to be. First of all, are we going to be a for-profit or are we going to be a non-for-profit? Then we need to decide what it is we're going to do to organize. And this is not trivial. So how many of you have had legal environment of business? Okay, quite a few of you have had legal environment of business. Now, I know that when you took legal environment of business, you studied for the exams, right? And then you crammed all of that into your head, and then the minute you got out of legal environment of business, information dumped all of that stuff because you didn't think you'd ever have to have it, and it wouldn't be important ever again, right? Turns out it is, because when we think about marketing, when we think about what kind of organization we want to become, one of the things that we have to decide, after we decide whether we're going to be a for-profit or not-for-profit, is how are we going to organize ourselves, right? Now, in the for-profit world, and somewhat in the non-for-profit world, there's fewer options in terms of organizations for nonprofits. But in the for-profit world, for those of you who have had legal environment of business already, what are some of the ways that we can start a business? Okay, doing business as, the sole proprietorship. Now each of these types, right, a DBA, move this out so has advantages and disadvantages when we think about planning and strategy. So we can have a DBA, right? Doing business as, a sole proprietorship. What's the advantage here of forming a forming a business and just hanging out a shingle? What can I do?
You get everything. You're entitled to all the profits.
You get everything. You don't have to answer to anybody else. It's just you, right? What kind of business could I start? Pretty easily, that you couldn't start as a sole proprietor. Huh? A law firm. I could start a law office, right? I could go hang out a shingle and start a law office. And I do. I practice law from time to time. I actually do engage in the practice of law. So I have clients. It's easy to do. And what happens? I reap all of the benefit. I don't have to share it with anybody else. What's the disadvantage of this? What?
Liability.
Liability.
You pay all of it.
If somebody sues you, you have unlimited liability, right? For any mistakes or things that you create. Another type of business that's easy to form is what? A partnership, right? So as a lawyer, maybe it would behoove me or be beneficial, right, as I'm thinking about the practice of law, to ask somebody else to go in with me. Why might I want to do that? Share the work. In a highly specialized world, can you be sort of a jack of all trades anymore?
Not really.
No? Yeah, the days of general practicing in the field of law are largely out the window, unless you live in a small town like I do in Guthrie, right? But even then, generally people have this tendency to kind of like specialize. So maybe you want to take on a partner because they can bring something else. I'm really good, for example, at, I don't know, trademark and copyright and patent. That's the type of law I practiced when I was in the private sector and when I was a general counsel for a publicly traded company. Maybe somebody else brings something else to the table. They might be really good at taxes. My brother's a tax attorney. He went to TU and then to NYU for an LLM in taxation. Would that be beneficial if I wanted to practice business law or law organizations? Yeah, it could be, right? I don't know anything about taxes because he got a degree in the undergraduate area of accounting. Yeah, how boring, right? Who could stay awake long enough to do? But he's really good at taxes. He knows all about taxes. So you can form a partnership. Now, it's easy to form, right? I just get with my brother and we hang out a shingle, and it's no longer just Grant Aguirre Law Office. It's Aguirre and Mazza. He has a different father, so his name is Mazza. Aguirre and Mazza, attorneys at law. What's the disadvantage now of this form? You have to split the profits, right, depending on how we organize the company.
And you're still personally liable, like if your partner leaves the country and is gone, they can.
Oh yeah, now I'm not only liable for my own stuff,
You're liable for what your partner.
I could be liable for what my partner does. Do I want to do that? I don't know, my brother's a pretty good attorney, so maybe, right? Other people I'm not so sure about. What?
Things to consider.
Things to consider, right? But it's easy to form, right? Now you shouldn't confuse, when you think about this stuff, how easy it is to form with the substantive areas of law that you're also going to have to comply with when you think about the things that you need to do. So in terms of the substantive law, as I'm thinking about planning, or as you're thinking about planning for yourself and your business, could you all go out and become an attorney right now? No, right. Why not?
You don't have to know the bar exam.
Yeah, you have to have gone to an ABA accredited law school. That's the substantive area of law to get licensed to practice law. You can't just, if you hang out a shingle that says, you know, Mr. or Mrs. X, really good law firm, and you don't have that license to practice law, what is that? That's the unauthorized practice of law, right? And it's a bad thing. You can get in big trouble for that. So you have to think about that. What are the substantive regulations? So you could start, for example, let's say you wanted to start a restaurant. They open all the time, right? We have lots and lots of restaurants. And in fact, one of the things that I think is interesting about Oklahoma City, and when I tell people that I wanted to go back to Oklahoma after I got my PhD, they looked at me like I was crazy. Like, why would you want to go back to Oklahoma? I dearly love the great state of Oklahoma. It's a perversion I share only with consenting adults, though. I think that we have actually really interesting food here. One of the things that I really like about Oklahoma is that you can get almost any kind of food that you want in Oklahoma City that you can get anywhere else, and it's really pretty good because we have a lot of entrepreneurs that have started restaurants. Now, what would be the substantive concerns that they have to think about? You don't necessarily have to be licensed to be a chef, right? There's no like certifying agency. I mean, there are people that say you passed, you know, the Cordon Bleu or something like that. But you can cook, right? How many of you like to cook? Quite a few of you. You can open up your own restaurant. There's no chef certification that you have to get to open your restaurant. But what might you have to think about? Health codes. What else? Maybe a liquor license if you want to have a bar along with that. What else? Okay, you have to think about all of these things in terms of the legal environment. We'll talk about environmental scanning. What other things might you have to think about? Oh, not just health codes, but taxes, right? Filing with the Oklahoma Tax Commission to get tax permits and things like that. Okay? The next type of entity that you can have, and these are broad generalizations. In Oklahoma, we have some specialty categories, and in other states they have specialty categories. These are creations of the state, and now you have to file not only in the substantive area of the law, but also you have to file with somebody and say, hey, I'm in business, because they start to limit your liability. The most common, or the oldest, is probably the traditional corporation, right? You incorporate with the state. In Oklahoma, you do this by filing incorporation documents with the Secretary of State. And it's not all that difficult. There are some alternate forms of this that limit liability. Now what you've done is you filed and you're now saying, I'm not liable for the things that happen in the corporation, right? So if you have your restaurant and you're incorporated, you put people on notice by filing with the Secretary of State. And for example, if you give them food poisoning in your restaurant, it could happen, right? Can they sue you personally? No, they sue the restaurant, right? And you've limited your liability. There are some less formal forms of these that you can do as well in Oklahoma. For example, the limited liability company, which allows you to operate sort of like a partnership, but have the advantages of limited liability, so that you're not necessarily liable for your partner's torts, things like that. So you have to think about that. And these are not trivial things that you want to think about, right? Now, once you've incorporated, we need to think about how you're going to structure things. And your text talks about sort of the organizational structure. So generally, what we have is we have shareholders in a big corporation, right? We have shareholders who elect a board of directors, who elect or appoint top management, right? Now at this level, things like Ford Motor Company, GM, what else? Johnson & Johnson. What are some others that you can think of? General Mills, Apple, right? They set broad direction for the company, right? If you have a really big corporation, you'll have strategic business units that are below that. These are basically SBUs. These are basically sort of businesses, subsidiaries maybe, that have their own clients and operate, they have their own budgets usually, and operate with some independence from the top. So top is going to set these broad overarching goals, and then you have these strategic business units. So my sister works for a company. She's the president of L3 Integrated Systems. That is a strategic business unit within L3. She's president of L3 Integrated Systems. That's a strategic business unit. They have their own clients. And what her strategic business unit does, as I understand it, is that they work with the Department of Defense, as one of their things, to modify the C-130 for certain types of commands. So she's got her own clients, her own sort of budgets and things like that, and her own marketing. So as you go to the strategic business unit, what happens to the goals and strategies that you're going to be developing? They become more specific, right? As opposed to the general that you're going to have at L3, which is the big umbrella corporation. Then you have, within the strategic business unit, you have functional departments, right? Running out of space. So you have things like the marketing department. This becomes even more specific in terms of goal setting and things like that. Day-to-day operations. So we've formed our corporation. Now we need to ask ourselves, why is it that we exist, right? We have this idea, and one of the things that your text talks about is on page 30, Professor Theodore Levitt's seminal article called Marketing Myopia. And what Levitt says is that a lot of times what happens is we become too myopic in our focus, right? So at the beginning of the 20th century, what were some of the largest companies in the United States? Railroads. Are they still some of the largest companies? Well, some of them. Burlington Northern Santa Fe is still a fairly large company, isn't it? But what happened? They were really good at being railroad companies, but what has allowed companies like, oh, I don't know, Microsoft, FedEx, all these other things to become larger and much bigger companies than, say, the railroads? And a lot of railroads have gone broke.
The ability to adapt.
Huh? Okay. Yeah, the ability to adapt. So they were thought of themselves as railroad companies. A lot of them went broke. Why? Because what is the general category that they were in? Transportation, right? They thought of themselves as being railroad companies. How many people actually travel by railroad anymore? Not very many. I went on the Polar Express. They had this Polar Express train in Bristow this last year. Anybody do that? Anybody go do the Polar Express? It was fun for about an hour. That's about how long it lasts. They take you out to, they've set up this little village where they pretend that it's the North Pole, and Santa comes on and gives each child on the train a little silver bell. And it was an entertaining way to spend an afternoon with one of my friends and her child, right? I figured if I wanted to go, I like kids and I like kids' books. I don't want to have them. But I figured I needed to have a kid go with me to this little event, so I asked her if she wanted to go, and I paid for it. We took her kid and we got on the Polar Express. And it was a lot of fun, right? But why do most people not travel by trains anymore? It takes forever, they're slow, we can do what? Drive, hop on an airplane, and get there a lot faster. So a lot of railroads were broke because they didn't focus on the larger thing, which is transportation, right? So don't become too myopic. Ask why it is that we're going to exist, but don't become myopic. Organizations will form cultures. So what is a culture?
System of beliefs.
Okay, beliefs, values. Let's think about the United States. Do we have a culture in the United States?
Yes.
More than one? Would you say that there are cultural values that we share as Americans? What are some of those?
Dollar.
What?
I want to be more dollar.
I'm sorry, what? Dollar.
Yes.
Okay, so what about the dollar as our common culture?
I would say everything revolves around the people.
Oh, okay. We have a culture that revolves around the almighty dollar. We are highly capitalist. We're probably the most capitalistic society of the Western nations, right? So yes, we do pay a lot of attention to the almighty dollar. And in fact, there is a theory in the social sciences and political science in general that says that one of the things that happened on Tuesday, I think I suggested to you all that you should watch the president's speech, right? Because this is really a marketing speech. How many of you actually did that? A few of you watched the president's speech. What did you think? What? Okay. He focused a lot on equality. Free college education. Wow, how many of you like that idea? Free college. It's too late now for you because you're here at UCO and you've already passed the mark. Oh, well, let's shut the door on those people that are below us, right? We don't. You all have gone because he wanted free college, not just for all 4 years, but for what? For community colleges, right? And so, and obviously, you're beyond the community college because you have to get into this class junior standing, right? So everybody in here is a junior. Is anybody not a junior? How did you get in? You. How did you get in? The prereqs for this course say you have to have junior standing. So I'm a little amazed.
I thought I was a second semester sophomore.
Maybe you're a junior.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
You maybe have enough hours to be a junior, because that's one of the things. So for a lot of you, this wouldn't do you any good because you're all juniors. How many of you are seniors? A few of you are seniors, okay. So you're way beyond the point at which the president was talking about this. Now, Frank Keating, when he was governor of the great state of Oklahoma, said we needed to raise tuition at our public colleges and universities because he said there was no pride in the cheap education. Do you all believe that?
No.
You think you need to pay more money to come here? Yes, ma'am.
I took advantage of, in high school, concurrent classes. Like
Okay.
my mom was that evil parent that made me take it starting as like a junior. So technically, I am a junior, but I've only been here for 2 years.
Okay, but it's the junior is classified by the number of hours you have.
True.
So,
But my
okay.
mom took advantage of free education while I was in high school.
Okay, so do you think there's pride in free education?
Yes.
You think Frank Keating's point is that you'll work harder for it if you actually have to pay for it, rather than if you just get it for free.
No, because, well, first of all, I went to OCCC and I graduated from an Oklahoma City high school, which meant that I
Got free college
Oh, you
tuition.
pay for the fees, but you get the tuition.
And you have to pay for the books,
Yeah,
which are expensive.
yes,
Right?
but it's doable on your income, you know, because you got loans for that.
Uh-huh.
And I actually felt a lot better about that one than this one where I'm just taking out a bunch of loans and I'm like, whatever, I'll do it later. It doesn't feel like I'm paying for it right now, so I don't think it makes you work harder.
You don't think it makes you work?
It's so expensive that you don't feel it right now.
Okay. Actually, UCO is still fairly good value for the money, right?
They are,
Compared to
other colleges in which you're taking out even more loans.
Yeah, when I graduated from law school years and years and years ago with my law degree, I went to Oklahoma City University. My parents wanted to know why my brother and I couldn't go to we got admitted to, both of us got admitted to OU, and we chose to go to OCU and TU respectively, and I was paying $870 a credited hour when I graduated from law school. The average lawyer now comes out $200,000 in debt from student loans. I don't know how they're going to make it at that point.
Yeah, well, if they raise education costs, then it's gonna raise the need for more higher, or I guess, bigger packages for scholarships, or whatever, but, get a scholarship.
Yeah.
So that I don't have to pay. And if it raises it, then I'm gonna have to work even harder to prove that I can get a free education. I don't
That you
think
should get the scholarship.
That's that.
All right. All of this goes to say that one of the things that we do worship in this country is this almighty dollar. There's this theory that says that part of our culture is framed by this elite theory mentality. So President Obama talked about giving free education. How are we going to pay for that? Well, how does he want to pay for it? Raise taxes on the wealthiest individuals in the United States, right? And elite theorists say that's never really going to happen. This is part of our culture because what happens? People think I'm going to be rich someday and I don't want to pay taxes. Therefore, I don't want to raise taxes on the wealthy because what? It could be me, right? I'm going to college, I'm going to be rich. DeVista used to ask students in their undergraduate career where they thought they would be by the time they were 30. Overwhelmingly, our students here at UCO said that they thought they would be millionaires by the time they were 30. I was one of those that said that. You see how it's turned out poorly, right, for me. So, that may be an unrealistic goal, but elite theorists say that this whole society is held together by our obsession with money and our obsession with and love for money, right? Because we all like our stuff and we don't want our stuff to be taken away. So we have this culture at the national level, right? Now, do we have a culture that's different in Oklahoma than other parts of the country? Yes? So we have even a more specific culture here in Oklahoma. What would you say is different about Oklahoma values and Oklahoma culture? We're in the Bible Belt, which means what's an indication of a difference in our culture? What does Oklahoma have the distinction of being? One of the things in the last presidential election.
The reddest state in the country.
The reddest state in the country. We're the only state that did not have even one single county, as I recall, that went for President Obama, right? The only one that can say that. That's different than where? New York, right? California, where they overwhelmingly voted for President Obama, right? So we have this culture, and organizations have cultures as well, and it's important to recognize that. Now, do these cultures form from the top down or from the bottom up, do you think? Huh? Maybe a little bit of both. I think they do. Now, the thing that's interesting about cultures is that once they're established, because they are this sort of enduring set of values that an organization has, are they easy to change? They're really not. They're kind of hard to change, right? It's hard to change these values. They can be changed, and they have changed. So, for example, I think the values at Apple are changing, right? As Steve Jobs died, I think that was very much an organization that was dominated from the top and permeated all the way down, and now maybe that's changing, right? It's less...
Kind of like that. My boyfriend works for a company that contracts with Apple, and Apple is always sending them like notices. It's like, this is our culture. We do these things.
Right.
So I think it's really funny that they're not even just like, oh, you know, you work here and you just absorb the culture. They give you missives. They're like, this is our culture. Be this way.
Right. And but they are changing. They are paying more attention to their customers, right? They come out with an iPad mini, one of the things that I talked about last time. So, for example, now this is not without controversy, and you need to think about this when we talk about ethics, which is the next chapter. This is Johnson & Johnson's culture. And I think this is interesting for those of you who said that we were largely influenced by the dollar. This is Johnson & Johnson. We believe our first responsibility is to the doctors, nurses, and patients, to the mothers and fathers, and all others who use our products and services. In meeting their needs, everything we do must be of high quality. We must constantly strive to reduce our cost in order to maintain reasonable prices. Customers' orders must be serviced promptly and accurately. Our suppliers and distributors must have an opportunity to make a fair profit. We are responsible to the employees, the men and women who work with us throughout the world. Everyone must be considered as an individual. We must respect their dignity and recognize their merit. They must have a sense of security in their jobs. Compensation must be fair and adequate, working conditions clean, orderly, and safe. We must be mindful of the ways to help our employees fulfill their family responsibilities. Employees must feel free to make suggestions and complaints. There must be equal opportunity for employment, development, and advancement for those qualified. We must provide competent management, and their actions must be just and ethical. We are responsible to the communities in which we live and work, and to the world community as well. We must be good citizens, support good works and charities, and bear our fair share of taxes. We must encourage civic improvement and better health and education, maintain good order, the property we are privileged to use, protecting the environment and natural resources. Our final responsibility is to our stockholders. Businesses must make a sound profit. We must experiment with new ideas. Research must be carried on. Innovative programs developed and mistakes paid for. New equipment must be purchased, new facilities provided, and new products launched. Reserves must be created to provide for adverse times. And when we operate according to these principles, the stockholders should realize a fair return. Milton Friedman would say this is horrible. Businesses' only legitimate goal is to make a profit, is what he would say, right?
As much money as humanly possible.
That's it. You just need to make money. That's your only goal, is to make money for the shareholders. This is Johnson & Johnson's organizational core values. Now, one of the things that's interesting about this is they're an old company. In a book called Built to Last by James Collin and Jerry Parias, they say that organizations that do well, Businesses that do well have a core set of values. They have these core enduring beliefs. The interesting thing is, though, they don't necessarily have to be good values, right? Philip Morris is one of the companies that they listed as a company that was built to last. They were describing the CEO of Philip Morris as ruthless and manipulative. And he would say that he saw nothing wrong with making a product that people did not need. Are cigarettes a product that people not only don't need, but what? Yeah, it's not only that they don't need them, it's that they are dangerous. But they have these core values. So the most successful companies have these. They have these core sets of values, and it permeates their culture. These will lead to our mission. Understanding the core values leads to the mission of the organization. From that, we can then go about coming up with goals for how we're going to achieve our mission, right? Now, what makes a good goal? So, some of you in here, let's see, I got the roll sheet back. Everybody have a chance to sign the roll? What makes a good goal? We'll use the Socratic method. I'll call it somebody randomly. Mr. Eckert,
Hey.
how are you?
Good, how you doing?
What's a good goal?
Well, for me, be a good leader.
Be a good leader. Okay? This is your goal. Be a good leader.
All right.
All right? It's a noble goal. Is it a good goal? What qualifies it as a good goal? I don't know. What qualifies it as a good goal? Something that benefits you? If he's a good leader, is it benefiting him? Not necessarily. Okay. Let's see. Who else? Ms. Hookhill.
Yeah.
Where are you? Is that a good goal?
Yeah.
It's a good goal? Could it be a better goal?
Yeah.
How? Ah, okay. We could transform this goal into being more what? Descriptive. So what makes a goal a good goal? Okay, it should be realistic. That's one of the 3 characteristics of a good goal. It should be realistic. Is it realistic that you could be a good leader? That's absolutely a realistic goal, right? What else should it be? Specific. Right, that's the second characteristic, actually maybe the first characteristic, depending on how you want to listen. Okay, so it should be realistic. I want to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30. Is that a good goal for me? I'm 10 years from retirement, right? I can retire at 55. So, because I've been here since I was 22 at UCF. And with my number of years and age in service, I can retire at something like 55. Isn't that great for me? Defined benefit plan, that's why I'm here. So I've already, that goal's not realistic, right? That goal passed. My 30s are long behind me, right? So, not realistic. Specific, right? Concrete. So, it should be more specific. How are you going to be a good leader? I don't know. We can come up with more specificity. I will be a good leader by demonstrating what?
By utilizing certain techniques, by helping my employees to do.
Okay, by helping my employees to achieve their goals or something like that. What else? What's the third characteristic that we have to have? What?
Achievable.
Okay, that's realistic. Specific. Okay, that gets to what it is. It's measurable. We have to have a measurable goal, right? So I want to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30. I've passed that. But, is that realistic? I don't know. Not for me anymore, right? Maybe for you. Is it specific? Yep, absolutely, because we can do what? We can measure it. How can we measure it? Well, we have this date certain. It's your birthday when you're going to turn 30, and what? The amount of money that you have to, your net worth that you have to be worth by the time that you reach that goal, right? So that's a good goal. It has to be specific, realistic, and measurable. So in developing these, we come up with long-term courses or strategies. How should we go about coming up with our strategy to achieve our goals? Well, the first thing that we want to do, there's a 3-step process discussed on page 39 of your text. We want to first off engage in or conduct a SWOT of our business or ourselves. You can do this for yourself in your goals. We know that people who come up with goals and write them down are more likely to succeed. So let's think about a goal, for example, that is applicable to everybody in this room. What's a goal that's applicable to everybody in this room? Graduate, right? Just saying I'm going to graduate is not a great goal because what? Well, you're going to graduate what? When you're 50? By the time you're 50, if you haven't graduated from here, what's happened?
There's a problem.
There's a problem, right? So what is a good goal? I want to graduate with a degree in personal selling, professional selling, by what? Most of you are juniors. By the spring of 2016, right? Is that a good goal? Specific? Right? Realistic? Yeah, for a lot of you. Measurable? Sure, absolutely, right? Now, do most people actually graduate college in 4 years? No, they don't. I graduated in 3.5 years from college, but I was sort of an exception, and my mother thought I was a slacker because she started college when she was 16 and she graduated in 3 years, so she thought I was really taking a lot of time doing this. But I didn't have to work, right? Among my generation, you didn't necessarily have to work, our parents paid for it. It was really cheap when I went to school in Oklahoma at the undergraduate level to go. I think my average tuition bill was something like $400 a month at that point in time. Much different than when I went to law school and I was paying $800 accredited hour or $870 accredited hour. So most of you, why is it that you don't graduate in 4 years? For a lot of you. You have jobs, right? It's really difficult to, can you take 12 hours and graduate in 4 years? 12 hours is considered full-time, right? Can you do that and graduate in 4 years? You can't, right? You're going to have to do more than that. It's really difficult to take much more than 15 hours if you're what? If you're working. So a lot of you are working. So come up with these goals. It's realistic, measurable, and concrete, right? So we're going to do this SWOT to determine whether or not we can achieve our goals. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Now, 2 of these are internal to our organization or to us as students, right? And 2 are external. So what are some of your strengths in being able to graduate with a degree in professional selling by the spring of 2016? You're already enrolled. That's a strength. You've gotten up and you got here today. You got dressed, so you showed some initiative, right? You're juniors. That's a good one. That's a strength that you have. You have these number of hours behind you. What else? Could be a strength for some of you.
Determination.
Determination. The ability to see things through. What else? Experience could be good, right? Intellect could be a strength. You're really, really bright, right? Do you have to be a genius to graduate from college? Is college a test of intelligence? It's not. It's a test of endurance, right? Can you sit here long enough, right? So those are all maybe strengths. What are maybe some weaknesses that you want to focus on? Your social life could be interfering with your studies, your ability to do things. Okay, so you can control that, maybe. Jobs. That could be a threat, right? That could be external. You don't necessarily have control over that. You have to work. How many of you have to have a job? The rest of you are lazy? Independently wealthy? No? Okay. Didn't see a whole lot of hands go up. So you have to have a job. That's controlled by somebody else, right? It could also be an opportunity though, right? To make more money, okay? So thinking about these things, these strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Then we're going to set these goals. And then we have to constantly monitor this, right, in the three-step process. So we identify our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We come up with our product, what it is that we want to achieve. And then graduating from college, for example. And then we have to implement our program, the marketing program, which is the third step. And it requires constant evaluation. If you can't achieve it by spring of 2016, what do you want to do, maybe?
Finish in the fall.
Huh? Yeah, finish in the fall or the summer, revise your goals, things like that. Not become so focused on them that it leads to necessarily bad results. You can look at products, and the Boston Consulting Group comes up with a way of looking at these things to determine what you should be doing, and it's a 2x2 matrix based on whether or not you have high growth potential and market share, right? So you have high and low, and high and low. And they give names to these, right? And your text gives you an example about Kodak. Most products probably start out as question marks, where there's high growth but low market share, right? Where do you want to be? You want to be high, high. That's called a star, right? And what your product is and where it's at in this is going to determine how you go about making your goals and strategies. So stars, a lot of times, because of the high growth potential, require more investment, right? Lots of growth, you have high market share, that's a star, you're going to have to continue to feed it. If you have low growth but high market share, that's a cash cow. What should you do with your cash cows? What's a good strategy to do with your cash cows? So for example, they give the example of Kodak. What do you want to do with your cash cows? Use that money to what? To fund other projects, to cultivate your stars, keep them going, to promote question marks. Where do you not want to be?
Well,
The low, low, right? This is called a what, according to the text? That's a dog. What do you want to do with dogs?
Probably cut them unless there's some political or advantageous reason to just have them around and throw money at them.
Yeah, you don't want to throw money at them. You might want to harvest them, right? Start getting the money and using it towards something else. What's an example of, and when we talk about what companies need to do, and we talk about new products, so all of this stuff sort of integrates. When we talk about new products, for example, we're going to come up with this idea that companies need to constantly be innovating to stay relevant to their customers and to society. And so they come up with new products all the time, some of which will work, some of which won't. The vast majority of businesses and the vast majority of products fail, right? Sometimes though you keep a dog around because it satisfies a need of a current customer group, and I'll give you an example of this with Coca-Cola. There's a soft drink that they have that most of you have probably never heard of or even tasted. It's called Tab. Anybody heard of it? You've heard of Tab, you've never tasted it though, have you? No, I didn't think so. It's a diet drink, it's horrible. They don't do any advertising. Why do they keep it around? It's a dog, basically. Why do they keep it? Certain people like it. It's got a very die-hard sort of group that they continue to do it, but they are basically harvesting and trying to divest themselves of that product. So thinking about that. Diversification analysis. What we can do after we come up with where we are in the matrix on our products, we can decide that we're going to penetrate the market more. Try to sell more product to existing customers. How do you do that? How do you sell more product to existing customers? Advertising. Remind people. Why is it that Coca-Cola still advertises? They'll advertise at the Super Bowl, right? We're coming up on the biggest day in advertising and marketing.
I wonder how much Super Bowl commercial are those games?
I think there's something like $35 million for a 30-second spot. I think that's right. I'd have to look. But I'll look and I'll tell you next time. But I think it's about $35 million for a 30-second second spot.
Does that money go to the broadcasting networks or something?
It goes to networks, but they pay off, obviously, the network that has the rights to broadcast has to pay who? The teams, the NFL, things like that. So we can try to get people to buy the product, buy more Coca-Cola, for example, right? We can develop the product, market development, sell our current product to new markets. Do you think Coca-Cola is really sold about as much as they're going to sell in terms of their units in the United States? Right, so where do you want to, what do you do? Go to other countries, right? Start selling there, maybe. Develop new products for current markets. Coca-Cola does a lot of that, right? We'll look at the list of products when we talk about new product development. And then finally, diversification. Now this is highly risky, diversification. Why is it risky? Now one of the things, if you've taken personal finance, how many of you have taken personal finance? Most of you should have taken it by now. Is that one of the things that will take, the closest thing to finance, the closest thing to a free lunch in finance that you get is that diversification of your portfolio is a good thing, right? Because what does diversification of your investment portfolio do? It minimizes what we call industry-specific risk, right? It minimizes microeconomic risk. If you have all of your stock, for example, currently in the energy sector, and in particular in oil and natural gas, what's happening to your stock today? It's probably not doing so well, right? So if you've diversified your portfolio, you have less of a risk at the micro level. You still face macroeconomic risk, but you have diversified your portfolio. With regard to businesses, this is a more risky strategy. Why is that? Because you're not actually managing the companies that you're investing in through your 401k or 403b, right? But companies, when they go out and they diversify their portfolio, they actually have to manage those companies. And they may not know anything about the industry into which they're going. And if they don't, so for example, the text gives you an example of Ben & Jerry's. It says Ben & Jerry's could develop children's clothing lines, right? As a diversification. What is Ben & Jerry's known for? Ice cream. Is this going to be very successful? Well, they don't know how to source this product, right? It's probably going to be expensive. Do they know anything about the market? Those kinds of things are inherently risky. Now, some companies can do it. Big companies like Coca-Cola have actually diversified, right? How many of you remember when Coca-Cola clothing was really popular? Some of you, right? They had Coca-Cola polos and stuff like that all over the place. So they did actually diversify. It would help that they were what? Coca-Cola is huge. They're really, really big, right? But it is a somewhat risky strategy. Are there any questions about strategy, goals, things like that we've talked about today? All right, I wanted to, again, emphasize, I am also the university's Title IX Chief Investigative Officer, so I get a voluminous amount of emails. So I just wanted to make sure that you all knew that you could email me at my email, but if I don't respond right away and you have an urgent need, be sure and send me a text on my cell phone, 405-414-7054, and say, hey, I sent you an email. It's entirely possible that it gets lost in the volume of emails. I get something like 100-something emails from across campus today. So if I don't respond and you have questions, please send me a text and I'll try and get to your email just as quickly as I can. Anything else? No questions? All right, I'm going to give you some time if you need to work in your groups to think about your group projects. Here you've got about 20 minutes, so you're welcome to do that. All right? And we'll see you on Tuesday.